Hello everyone, in today's video we will set up our advanced AI. If you see my showcase video, you've heard me complain about how enemies were too easy to beat and not smart enough. Another thing I noticed while making this was that I had to set up multiple different types of AI for the same types of characters, just based on their situation. So are they triggered by an alarm, are they using cover, or are they just walking around? The goal here is to create an advanced AI that can be used in all of those situations and isn't as easy to beat. If there happens to be a form of cover close, he will use that for a moment before engaging us. I also wanted to make sure that the gun decided how much damage we were going to apply to our enemy. It would make sense for a sniper to deal more damage than a handgun, for example. In order to create this, we will need Unity, Game Creator, the behavior, stats, shooter, or melee module. So let's dive in. Now, before setting up our scene, I'm going to show you exactly what I mentioned, really. So this is our traditional AI. He talks, he reloads, and then engages in combat. Now, reality is I could have easily killed him off while he was just shouting help, and that would have been the end of him. So now let's see our advanced AI. Now this is the exact same scene, just different enemy activated. He still patrols, so that hasn't really changed. But now he's going to actually use the cover. So he spots me, he hides for a bit, and then he comes out and starts shooting straight away. Also shoots a lot more accurate than before, double shoots. And we're shooting. Now I'm going to run real fast, dodge a bit. He's more accurate, so I need to dodge a tiny bit. I'm going to take this sniper, and you can see he only has 40 health left. Oh, first need to reload. And one shot kills him off. And he dies straight away, so there's no more going to 0 and then needing that last shot. He had 40 health, the sniper deals 50 damage, and he dies straight away. So a couple of the big changes here. Now you saw him use the first cover because that's the first cover that was in proximity. Now if he would have walked closer to this cover while patrolling, but I didn't want to wait too long, he would have used this cover. Now for the purpose of this demo, I only set up 2 covers. But you can easily set up these triggers around, a tree in every forest, basically. They're really easy to set up and don't actually contain any actions related to the AI themselves. All of the AI actions are under the actual enemy, making him, a lot better in every situation. So let's set up our scene. Now for the purpose of this tutorial, I will be reusing my advanced UI Plus, simply because that's the most recent one, not really any other reason for that. Now if you haven't seen any of my other enemy AI videos, I'll briefly go over a couple of the basic things that you'll need to set this one up. But it would definitely be useful if you've seen one of those before. Now let me change this. There we go. Now you might have noticed I do like to use the term advanced, but in comparison to our previous one, it is quite advanced. So here we have our basic scene. Let me turn all of these on. So we have our basic scene, we have our basic enemy AI, we have a weapon pickup for my sword and pistol. For the purpose of this tutorial, I will be using guns, but I will make the same change as I do to the pistol in terms of damage to the katana. So that's all you need to do if you're using the melee module. So just follow those steps and you'll be able to replicate exactly the same. first things we're going to do is we're going to create two list variables after we make a small change. So one of my biggest annoyances of our character was that he didn't actually die at 0. He needed that one more shot. Now this was really annoying, and I never really figured out, or, tried to figure out even why that was. So let me move that up. So we're going to make one small change. We're going to add another trigger here. We'll be reusing the same things we set up before, so no new actions or conditions here, just another trigger, and we'll split the existing ones up. So on attribute change, invoker, health, and on decrease, this is going to trigger. Now this will be a condition. I'm going to remove the one it automatically generates. So this is missing. Going to disable this one and add an action. Again, remove the action it generates. And we're going to drop in the one we already made. Now, this is the one below. So let's drop this one in first. So on shot, he will take damage. Now this will change as well. This is going to be based on a list variable, which we'll set up in a bit. And on attribute change, so when it, on health decrease, he's going to check a condition. Now this is the condition we set up before. Now let's make sure we open this one, and we're going to remove the else here. So we're only going to have if his health is less or equal to 0, he will ragdoll. And that's it really. So that's the action, he's going to ragdoll. I'm going to add a simple small change here. So the invoker is going to reset his state. Now, reason for this is that if this is not included, he can, in the odd situation, not properly trigger his ragdoll. So that's why I'm adding this. No transition time. We don't actually need to see it. It needs to go pretty fast. Small weight, just to make sure these actually follow up. But it's so small that you won't actually notice anything. And we have the ragdoll. And there we go. So those are the actual changes. He will still destroy in the background, but now once he gets shot, he'll decrease his damage, but once his health is 0, in general, he will actually die. So, small change, but a necessary change. Now let's close all of these up. What we're going to do next is we're going to create list variables. Cool. Now the cover options is going to be empty. We're not actually going to add anything here. It's just going to be an empty list for now. This one, however, it needs to be different. So this will need to be a number. We need to add something here, but nothing at all. So it's just going to be 0, and that's the number. Going to drag these up a bit. There we go. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to go to our pistol, and we're going to add a couple of things. So first off is going to be clear. So I want, every time we draw this weapon, I want to clear the list we are going to create here. While going to add something too, really. So drag in our gun damage. Again, that really small yet necessary weight. And we're going to go to our list variable options and can't remember which one. I think it's this one. Yeah, there we go. List variable. I'm going to change this to current, and we're going to drag our gun damage in again. So gun damage, that's this value. Once we're going to draw our pistol or pick it up, it's going to clear that list value, so back to 0, and add 20 in the case of the gun. Now you can determine how much damage your gun does yourself. This is completely up to you, but this is a way to do it. Now if you want the same thing to happen with the sword, we are simply going to duplicate all of them. So I know the list says gun damage, but you know, just imagine it says weapon damage. Now a katana, my opinion, should do a bit more than a shot, but again, you know, up to you. Let's say 25, doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to duplicate the pistol here. There we go. Rename this to sniper. And I don't have a shotgun, otherwise I would have actually used this shotgun. But let's just do sniper here. And it's going to do exactly the same, but it's going to pick up a sniper. And there we go. Now the sniper needs to do 50 damage. And that's it. So basically a 2-shot gun, which is quite similar to how most snipers would act in, you know, say Call of Duty, for example. 2 shots are enough. And that's it. So every time you draw a weapon, now if you do this with hotkeys, you know, switch between weapons or whatever, you can add this. There might be a better way, but I do think list variables is the way to go. Maybe doing it like this isn't perfect, but it's definitely, you know, a good solution, which will work. Now we've set up our gun damage. We don't need to look at that anymore. You can completely drop this down, and that's set up. So we'll test that a bit later, but all of these variables will work. Now we have our enemy AI. I'm simply going to duplicate him here and give him that nice Apple Plus branding, and we're going to disable this one. You could just continue with this one and make those changes here. I just prefer always duplicating, that way if I mess something up I can always go back to the original one. We've already set up our triggers here, so let's just skip to setting up a new behavior tree. And there we go. It's a bit of a weird name, but you know, just to make sure I'm not overriding the one I already have. Now we're going to drag this in and set it up. Now this behavior tree is actually going to be really small. It doesn't actually do all that much. It's going to be a lot shorter than the previous ones we've set up, but that's because I don't need it to actually do that much. It just needs to create a basic order in which certain tasks will play. There we go. Now these will still be the same conditions I've used before. So if he doesn't see us, he will walk, because he's going to walk his patrol. He's already going to draw his weapon. I'm going to give him my custom 1911 one here, but it doesn't really matter what you're using. Can just be the revolver. I'm going to give him ammo, which has to match the gun, obviously. I'm going to give him 100 bullets straight away. Don't want him to run out. I'm going to have him reload. There we go. And lastly, he's going to execute actions. And this will be a variable. I'm going to call this patrol plus. I'm using the plus everywhere anyway, so I might as well. Now we're going to do the same here as we did before. So on a attribute change, so if his health is less than 100, he is going to act basically. Now he'll be able to run this time because we want him to actually, do something. So he can run. We're going to activate an object, which I'll explain in a bit. And he's going to execute a set of actions again, which will be search plus. Now this is definitely going to be the biggest change compared to before. We used to set up all of his search actions in our behavior tree. We're no longer doing that. We're keeping the behavior tree really short and simple. Reason I prefer doing it like that is because it's actually easier to change, less of a hassle, and your, behavior trees have their limits when it comes to calling, invokers. So, objects they need to go to. Everything needs to become a variable, and our parameter list will become really long. Now I want to avoid that, but I still need the behavior tree to determine what actions will actually play based on sight or health. So it's basically going to be, a really simple type of overview that determines which 3 main tasks he'll play, but nothing is actually really happening inside of here except for him, already being a weapon action ready by default when he's patrolling. I can actually copy over most of these, so I'm going to definitely do that. I'm going to call this visible. And this is going to be combat plus. Now as you can see, this is really short. He's not saying anything, there's no messages, really short. But we still want him to, actually say something. But I'm going to do that somewhere else, which makes it actually a lot more flexible, faster, and we can play around with the volume as well, which was one of my biggest issues, not being able to manage the volume. And basically when they were shouting, it sounded really, really loud. So we're going to add the parameters we just created. Patrol plus visible and hit. Perfect. Now this is the entire behavior tree, so really short and simple. We're actually going to set up the task somewhere else. Again, I'll explain the flexibility of that in a bit, but I've noticed that as necessary to be as it is to have a behavior tree, actually setting up large actions inside of it is, well, just not worth it at all, really. It's becomes more of a hassle than anything else. So what we're going to do is I'm going to rename this to Patrol Plus. Going to add a couple of empties here, which will be action plus our action combat will drop inside of that. Going to add another empty here, which will be search plus. So just dragging around the order a bit based on the order in the behavior tree. You don't need to do that, just I just like doing that. We're going to add another empty here, which will be our hit parameter. Now you don't need to do it like this, I'm sure variables would work as well, but I want to actually play the audio in here. So no, this one needs to be hit and this one needs to be visible. There we go. So what I'm going to add here is a audio source, and this is going to play my audio clip. So this one is, you can do enemy spotted, you can, well, enemy spotted might actually be slightly better. There we go, we'll use that one. Now I'm going to lower the volume because it's way too loud otherwise. It's not going to loop, just play once. Same here. I'm not sure exactly how it was being called. Oh, I'm hit. There we go. Oh, that's a female voice. That would be a bit of a weird situation if he would change voice all of a sudden. And there we go. Now, reason I'm doing this and not using the message is because the message actually needs time to play. Now, even though that might be, you know, just a mere 0.2 or, you know, a mere 2 seconds, those 2 seconds are enough for me to finish off our enemy, which is honestly no fun at all. I do want him to say something, but I don't want it to actually take up any time in during his actions. So that's why I'm basically hiding it away here. Now I've set up these basic steps, so let's already make sure he's going to use them. So I think, well, action plus combat plus doesn't matter. I'm going to drag in the search plus, our patrol, and our visible and hit. And that's it. Now that's literally going to be it for the behavior tree. You should definitely increase his sight, his vision distance. For demo purposes, I'm not going to do that because I want to close up demonstrate how he behaves. But this is way too small, way too small. Going to keep his stats as it is, and his health we already changed. So next up we are actually going to change his behaviors, but let's actually set up our really basic cover first. Now the goal with setting up this cover was to for once not actually create any actions. This cover, well, I'm using this object here, but the goal of the cover is that you can just drop that trigger on whatever cover you want to make. Now I'm going to demonstrate that as well by creating two. I'm going to create the trigger on one, and you'll see how easy it really is to just drag these around. And the good thing here is that the cover doesn't actually contain anything other than a trigger which will trigger one small thing, and you'll be able to just easy copy paste it all over your scene. That was the goal. Wanted to have it useful, and you're not tied to the actual object at all. Did I press build? Yeah, I already did. Perfect. So I'm going to give these some colors just so they actually stand out. Shiny red. Perfect. Now I'm even going to keep the names, well no, actually not going to do that. So high and low. That makes enough sense. So what the most important part here is, especially for the first one, it's just going to duplicate this. No, I'm actually not even going to do that. Let me completely remove that. And to keep it like that, we're going to create a marker. There we go. Important thing about a marker, by the way, is making sure that the point of the arrow is not colliding into an object. If it is, he won't be able to go there. I know, it's weird, but trust me on that. Next up, we're going to create an empty. This empty will actually be our trigger. Now, I'm putting the marker inside of that, not because it's necessary, simply because I want this trigger to become a real copy-paste action. That's the whole point of it. Let me actually drag this out for now. I'm going to drag this trigger in the middle. Make sure the center of it is useful. Cool. There we go. Drag this marker inside. I'm going to add a, let's do a sphere collider. This is quite big. I'm even going to make it even bigger. There we go. Now, if you're going to have a lot of cover options, definitely don't make it that big. But because I only have two, I do want to make sure it actually works. So this is going to be a trigger. And this trigger will happen on tag enter. Now this tag will be enemy. I only want something to actually happen when an enemy enters. Now if you want to make sure your companion uses it as well, just, well, basically just choose something else than enemy. Just choose AI or something like that and give it to all of them. Now I'm going to make sure he actually has it as well. There we go, enemy. Pretty sure it's supposed to be on this one. Just going to do it on both and that's it. Now all this actually does, this trigger is going to be one really simple action. Trigger action, there we go. And this is going to add our cover to a variable. Now add to list variable. It's going to add to cover options. Now this is the important one. Make sure this is done, well, like this really, because otherwise it will be buggy. And it's going to add the marker. So not the actual cover, it's going to add the marker. So as you can see, this entire action is based on the trigger, and this object being here doesn't actually really matter at all. That's the whole point. I want you to be able to, well, copy paste it basically, like I'm doing right now, to put on whatever object you want. It's the whole point of it. There we go, perfect. Now we have our second one. Now I will give these a different name just for the demo purposes. You don't need to do this, but I want to show how the list variable actually works. So calling this high marker and low marker. There we go. Just to show how it actually works, but you do not need to do that. All you need to do is copy paste. Because we assigned the marker in advance, your duplicate will just use its own marker. That's why it needs to be part of the trigger. And that's it. That's literally all the covers do. So completely different compared to our previous cover tutorials. This is actually going to be a really useful, quick to use, even if you're not using a cover shooter, but want to make sure your enemy is, well, briefly going to take cover before actually engaging in combat. Reason I'm doing that is so that, well, you can't just finish him off in 2 seconds, basically. Now, if you would get shot, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't just, stand around either. You try to hide for a moment. So that's the whole point of this. Now, all of the actions will actually happen inside of the enemy itself. So let's start off with the first one called Actions Plus. Now I'm adding this small weight, and I know it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense at the beginning, but if you don't do this, this basically doesn't work. So his entire behavior will not work without this initial weight. Just shows the importance of weights in there. Now the nice thing of having all of the actions being part of the AI itself is that we can use Invoker for everything. Another, well, basically big advantage. And he's going to use cover, so he's going to use the first one. Now, reason for this is that the moment he walks inside of this area, it will send this current marker inside of the cover options list variables, and it's going to do the index of 0, so it will be the first one in the list, because everything else will just happen below. So we need to make sure that once combat, or once he gets hit happens, he's going to go to the nearest one. Now the nearest one will be the last one he actually walked through, the its trigger, and that's why he's going to go to that one. Now, because I only have 2, that's not really that exciting, but imagine you have a small forest, you have these markers around every other tree. You want to make sure that he actually goes to the closest one around him, next to him, and not goes to the other side of the forest just to find cover. So that's the reason we're doing this. And again, nice thing here is that the cover itself it's just there just to be a collider, and it could be whatever object you want. It's all about the trigger, not about the object itself. So quite happy with that one, really. So yeah, he's going to hide there. I'm only having him stay in cover for a second. Well, maybe make it 2, We're going to change his state, so I want him to, you don't need to do this, I just like him to actually duck, for example, so crouch. So Invoker, he's going to crouch. Now if you have a nice cover animation, obviously use that. I'm just going to do crouch for now. And then after those 2 seconds, this is going to reset. And there we go. So it's going to reset, and then at the end of it, we're going to call an execute. Going to make sure this finishes, and that will be his actual combat actions. Now we're going to tweak these in a bit as well, and go over them, because I want him to be more accurate than he was before. But yeah, that's it. So there is no delay here, so he gets shot because we're not doing anything in the behavior tree. So if he gets shots or sees us, this will happen instantaneously, basically. So he will straight away walk to cover. Nothing is holding him back, nothing is slowing him down, and that's the whole point. Now you can obviously make it more interesting by having him change state, so actually have a hit animation. That's completely fine. Just make sure it doesn't take up too much time, because again, you'd be able to, the more time it takes before he does something, the easier it is to finish him off without him ever having a chance to do anything. So that's it for our Actions Plus. Now our search plus, let's drag in some actions, is going to be pretty much exactly the same. Not exactly the same, but pretty much. So this is if he, basically if he spots us, if he gets shot but doesn't actually see us, he's going to go in the closest cover next to him for 2 seconds before he's going to search. Now, because we're activating a different sound effect, he does say something else. So he says, "I'm being hit," but he takes the same actions. Well, the same basic actions anyway, before he actually starts his search. So that's why this is all copy and paste. The only one that's going to be different is this one, but we still need to set that up. So let's do that right now. So search actions. Now, if you've seen previous tutorials about AI, this would have actually been part of the behavior tree. Now, this time I don't want to do that. Simply because it is actually a lot easier to have it actually in the scene, because again we can just use invokers and he's going to move around a bit and you don't need to create all of those variables. So definitely quite a nice advantage there. So first one will be rotate. So he's not an idiot, he knows exactly where the shot came from. Now you can have an offset here, which is pretty interesting. So you can have an offset if you don't want him to exactly know, so it will be slightly to the left or right, but I don't think that's necessary because we're moving anyway, so he won't walk to the perfect spots anyway. So now this is one of the nice things, because we're doing this in the scene, we don't need to set up a variable for this. He's just going to walk towards the old shot marker. Now, if you haven't seen any of these videos, this shot marker is basically just a simple marker that is a child of our character. So it needs to be a child of the character because it needs to move along with him, and basically just points him in a not a direction, more a distance here. So this is the distance he will go to before actually doing anything. So this is the distance where he will search. Now if you want him to walk a lot further, just increase this distance, just move the marker up further. That's all it really does. Now the view markers are going to be used for rotation, so an additional 2 markers, which is based on the moment he's going to look in this direction and then look in this direction, basically. The other way around, yeah. So just a couple of basic markers here. So we're gonna wait until he actually arrives there. Once he arrived there, we're gonna have him look for a couple of seconds. So I'm gonna do 5, which might be a bit long. But again, keep in mind, if he sees us in the meantime, the behavior tree will kick in again, and that will supersede anything that happens here anyway. So it doesn't really matter all that much that it's a long time. It seems reasonable that he'd look for the guy who shot him for a little while anyway. So let's have this one first. He's gonna look in that direction for a bit shorter. He's going to look in the direction of the second marker. Another 3 seconds, and then I'm going to reset his health. Now, reason I'm going to reset his health, 2 reasons really, is I wanted, if he hasn't seen us in the meantime, I wanted to reset his patrol, but because this the order of the tasks in the behavior tree, this is 2. This would always supersede patrol unless this is not met. Now, because we're going to reset it to 100, this task is not, well, this condition is not met, so it will go back to task 3. So that's quite important with behavior trees. These numbers 1, 2, 3 actually mean something. They're not just to show you this is the first, second, and third you created. Now this is actually the order in which these tasks have priorities, basically. So quite important there. So yeah, that's the first reason why I'm resetting his health. Second reason is because I don't think it's any fun if you can just slowly kill someone off from a distance. He's never able to find you and he slowly dies. Now that might be a personal opinion, but I don't think that's, well, personally I don't think that's any fun, in a game. But again, that's just my opinion. So here we have a search actions, which we're dragging in search plus, and that's it. I'm not going to touch patrol plus at all. It's just a patrol area. He's patrolling, whatever, it's fine. Because we are going to make one small change here, which I completely forgot, which will be, can use navigation mesh. Now I turned this on a while back, but if you haven't seen that, this is important. Without nav mesh, he won't be able to navigate certain areas. We're going to go through navigation mesh anyway, just make sure this is on. Perfect. So now we have our search, we still have our patrol, and again, these are just the simple patrol actions. They're a child of the patrol area are just a bunch of markers, and we're moving to this marker, wait for half a second, moving to the next, and that's it really. Should actually add a restart here at the end. There we go. So yeah, that's literally everything Patrol Plus is, just walking to a bunch of markers. But because we're going to have objects in the middle, he's going to walk around them and it will look dynamic instead of just being straight lines. So in a game you could actually have the same patrol area several times and it would look different because he needs to avoid certain obstacles. So it will actually look completely dynamic while not being dynamic at all. So that's the nice thing about it. So like I mentioned, I'm going to tweak his shooting behavior a tiny bit. Reason for this is that I exaggerated a bit with how inaccurate he was while shooting. So I'm going to have that change a bit. So let's see. So this is the weight before he shoots. Now this is the reason it becomes less accurate, because he's doing the aiming rotation at this point, and then after 0.5 seconds he's going to shoot. Now if we're moving in the meantime, that means he's going to be off by 0.5 seconds basically. Now I'm going to make the 0.1, which is still enough in order for him to miss, but if we're not moving he will shoot and he will hit us straight away. Now one of the new options of the latest update in the shooter module is having a burst mode, which is pretty cool. I thought it was going to be part of a gun, but it's actually part of a behavior, which is really nice. And all I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to duplicate this one, put it in the middle, and I'm going to have him shoot twice. So not burst, just twice. It's still a pistol, it's not a, not a machine gun. And he's going to shoot twice. So just, he's going to be more accurate. He's actually going to pull out 2 shots, and that's it. Now, I want there to be a 0.1 second delay in there, because, if you're going to shoot twice and the object is moving, you are going to be less accurate. So yes, that's the reason there is another wait in there, just because it actually is more realistic that the second shot will not be a hit in movement. If you do not move, it doesn't matter, he will shoot straight anyway and he will hit you. So there we have it. That's our action behavior This is our search behavior and our patrol behavior. Now I mentioned nav mesh. That's an important last detail really. Now if you go to, this is nothing to do with game creator, this is a Unity function. So AI, window AI navigation, and we have our nav mesh here. Now this was an old one I had. I'm going to completely clear this one. I have my plane selected, going to press bake, and here we have our area. Now I need to make sure that these objects are not part of the navigation mesh, so I'm just going to select these two, make sure I only have these two selected. There we go. Going to go to object, no, this object only, no, this object only, not walkable, no, this object only, and we're going to bake. And basically this creates a, you can drag these points around if you want, I'm fine with them, but basically this creates a area he has to walk around. Now again, if you have a lot of objects and you can imagine the patrol markers being, you know, between them, it will look a lot, you know, a lot more dynamic, because he won't walk straight, he actually has to avoid objects. So that's really cool. It's an easy way how you can make the same patrol area look different in different areas with different AI. So really nice there. So let's see how our, yeah, I think this is pretty much it. Might have forgotten something, but you know, we'll find out in a second. So I'm going to hit play. Nice. I turned off my cinematic intro because I got tired of seeing the same one all the time. So picking up a pistol, now I'm going to pause for a second here. I'm gonna go to gun damage, and as you can see here we have 20 in our list variable. Now I'm going to resume our scene, going to pick up our sniper. There we go. And you will see the list variable value is now 50. Gonna go back to my pistol, and we're back to 20. So that's why the reset is in there. Need to make sure that it actually works. Now, going to pause this again and actually select our cover options. Going to resume the scene, and as you can see, he's walking close to this one. So now that's on the top of his list. It's the high marker. And I'm going to have him walk just a tiny bit more, just to show what happens. I don't think he's close to the other one. Let's make sure he actually gets close enough. And he doesn't actually get close enough. Oh, no, high marker again. That's the closest one. Oh well, but you get the point. Those are the triggers he's close to. And that's what he's going to use. So that's why first was important, because there we go.
I am hit.
And he's going to go to the first one because that's the closest one to him. And then he's going to go, he saw us, and that's it. You know, he's going to engage in combat. And well, shoot us. Oh, and he actually, well, that wasn't my best play. I don't think I actually had a save here because I didn't walk on our save point. Let me do that again because I actually do want to demonstrate the damage we're doing on our enemy. I was just being a bit slow there. And again, you know, I'm using a pistol, but I added the same value to the katana, so if you're using melee, it will be exactly the same. So there we go. We dealt 80 damage. Now here he's going to search because we're out of sight. He doesn't actually see us. And I'm not sure why all of my, you know, aim markers are no longer visible in my UI, but fine. Resets his health. I'm pretty sure I'm going to miss here because it's really difficult if you can't aim. Yeah. Oh. I'm going to go close to him.
Enemy spotted.
Dear God, it's really difficult to hit if you don't have a... There we go. And I actually dealt 20. Now that's interesting. That's not supposed to happen. So it's good that I tested this because we're not dealing the damage we should be dealing. So that's a good one. Let's actually have a look here. So our enemy AI, why are you not working? So on attribute change, there we go. No, nothing here. Oh, I completely forgot to actually make this change. So it's still just taking 20 even though we're changing the number. So let's make sure this amount, so we're going to not touch this one, going to change this one. Actually triggers our health. So I'm just going to change this to current. There's only going to be one, so I don't think it really matters all that much. Because we're emptying the list all the time anyway. So there we go, gun damage, that's the value, because gun damage is our value. Now let's try this again. Oh, well, it would help if we would actually take off that number instead of adding it, because basically we are actually regenerating his health instead of diminishing his health. Well, there we go.
Enemy spotted.
And there we go. So we took off 20. I'm going to take our sniper here. I need to move around a bit more. Don't shoot me. Please don't shoot me. And there we go. We took off. I'm going to switch to my pistol just because he'll most likely, otherwise he'll kill me off before I have the chance to kill him off. So, and now he actually dies. So as you can see, he only had 10 health, and you know, pistol shot deals 20, and he actually dies and ragdolls. Now before we didn't have this, it would just go to 0 and you would have to shoot him again. So that was quite annoying, but it never really bothered me too much because, well, I'm not using health bars for my own game. But then I realized with having different gun values, I did actually have to fix that because otherwise it wouldn't work. So, complete solution here. So we have our smarter AI. He's a lot faster in action. He shoots more accurate, but he actually dynamically uses cover, takes, you know, the correct gun-based damage, uses nav mesh to not be, you know, to be smarter basically. So a lot more interesting, a lot better AI, a lot more fun in combat. And I know one of them is, you know, not going to be challenging enough, but it never is in any shooter game. You will always have loads of enemies, and that's where it will become a lot more interesting. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.